Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Follow me on social media if you'd like. No hot takes, no political opinions, just some of my groovy little art. I post about once or twice per week. I don't even overwhelm you. So, links are in the description below if you'd so like. And then I also have a link to the two stories that we are going to cover today. We are going to be looking at Thor 354 and 355 from 1985 by the one and only Walter Simonson. We're picking up right where we left off. I have the entire collection in a playlist for Walter Simonson's Thor run. Feel free to check that out if this is new for you. That way you can start from the very beginning. So we got our cover here. And this is Hela, who at this time was Loki's daughter. So as we saw in the previous issue, Odin and Surtur both went into that pit, and here Thor is screaming out for him. The lettering by John Workman Jr., of course, my favorite letterer. So Thor senses that Odin is gone, and Loki agrees. He's thinking that even his magic can't sense of him, and that they're nowhere in the nine worlds. So now he's going to make his move. However, Thor starts to beat on this thing and says, even if I have to destroy Asgard, I'll open the path to Muspelheim. Of course, Loki is yelling no and tries to stop him. Loki tells him that they can't help him now. Thor's angry. He's like, unhand me, you traitor. That he's somewhere in, like I said here, Muspelheim. And Thor wants to seek him out. So Thor swats him away, and I love this panel here. He tells him that without his help, neither Thor nor Odin would have prevented Surtur from destroying everything. And he says that Odin is not dead, otherwise his powers would have passed to them as it passed to his brothers before him, and that's in Thor 349. Like I said, feel free to go to the playlist. I have Walter Simonson's entire run. And so Loki, smiling, smirking here, says it's Odin's power that's probably keeping Surtur at bay. And if you go in there, you'll probably release the demon and undo everything that they've accomplished. And said to think, use what little brains you have. So, Thor says that he knows what Loki is thinking, but that he's right. So, but he gives Loki a warning that that as he plots, he'll be watching you, and he says that he hopes to make things interesting. So Thor thinks, of that I have no doubt. So on Earth, Carnella is and the warriors are trying to finish off the remnants of Surtur's forces. I love again how instead of, being ultra detailed, he just with a few little figures here, he just shows that these patches, it's very cool how simplified that is. And so Bill is actually impressed because they're outnumbered 100 to 1, meaning the Surtur soldiers, but they continue to battle, and then suddenly they all burn themselves because the gateway is closed, and without them, they've lost their connection. And here, the Asgardians have finally won. So Bill shouts the battle cry that victory is theirs. The desert is clean. Um, Fandral says that Balder and the Queen arrived there at the opportune time. So, and Carnella says she has little desire to stay in Midgard, which is Earth, and they're going to return now. Because and Baldur's going with her because he promised that he would get to know her better. So they're gone. So and Fandral says, I can't believe that he and her are together. So Bill tells him that he needs to return to New York and see if Lady Sif is still alive. And all three agree to go because Hogan, who's this guy here in the dark blue, carries a magical elixir of recovery. So now in New York, they kind of just basically, instead of showing, they just basically show the same thing, that the demons disappeared. And suddenly they're all here because, from the Sahara Desert to New York is just such a quick thing. So they have Sif right here, and he's told that she's badly hurt, but that she's alive. So Hogan is going to give her that magical healing elixir. So in Asgard, Thor thinks about Odin and how the kingdom is going to need him. Heimdall is wounded heavily, and here these trolls are wanting to attack, or the frost, I believe. I can't. I don't know if these are trolls, frost giants. And that they should attack Asgard, and so Thor senses something, and here comes a kind of a bit like a teleportal explosion or something like that, and it's Hela, the goddess of death. She said she felt a disturbance, kind of like the Force, and figured it was Odin, and she's come to get his body, but notices that it's not there. Heimdall thought she was coming for him, and Thor tells him he's still alive beyond her, and then she says, perhaps I should take you instead, and Thor hits her with the hammer, and she's like, you dare. And Thor is super angry. He tells her about all the people that she has unjustly taken and keeps hidden away in her realm, and just continues to hit her. And he says that his father may live or not, but his soul shall not be hers. She's going to try to touch him, but of course he says, you're too slow, death goddess, and just continues to hurt her. She's like, I've never seen him so angry. She can't stop him. She can't. So she starts to run away. And so he says, flee, but know that Thor won't be far behind, and that he has sworn an oath to aid those poor souls who have been enticed into death's unrelenting grasp. So he is going to make his way into hell eventually. So he warns her, Look to thy defenses, for the thunder god shall breach them. And so Hela escapes. And the frost giants are like, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking that a long trip to the mountains would be a good idea right now, so they're not even going to try to mess with Thor. So Heimdall has gone, and Thor wonders how the heck he's going to get the Asgardians home from Earth, and sees another light show behind him and think it's Hela, but it's Sif. And Sif found a way to teleport herself there, and she asks about Odin, and Thor says he's gone, and Thor blames himself and all that stuff, but she says, they fought bravely, and because of them, the universe still exists, and Surtur failed, quit punishing himself, and so he says he can't return to Earth at the moment because his head's not in it. He's sad about Odin's passing. She asks Sif to return to Earth with Bill and guard the humans as he normally does. And so they will, but he asks that she not tell everyone of Odin's death because they in their grief they might do more damage than Surtur's legion, she says. So and then he asks for a favor to ask Fendrel upon her return. So we're not privy to what he said at the moment. So Frigga and the kids have arrived at their destination. By the way, Frigga is who the day of the week Friday is named after, just like Thursday is Thor's day, and Odin is actually Wednesday. And if you look up why Odin is Wednesday, you'll have to I don't remember, but Wednesday is Odin's day. So anyway, so she tells the kids to go to bed. She says, hey, tell us a story. Volstagg always tells a story. And then Frigga is kind of short. Then he says when he comes for a visit, he can tell you a story. But she's too tired to indulge any of them. And that they'll have a story in the morning to go to sleep. And she'll come to bed shortly. And you can see her there kind of crying. And of course the kids follow her. And she says, you're right, Grinhild, she's crying. And they're like, don't cry. And she says, Odin's gone, isn't he? And she says that they knew it was going to happen because he sent them away so that they could watch her. But they tell her that he'll come back. But this kid's like, won't he? So, all right, so we're back to New York in Central Park. Sif has returned, and here she asks Bill to stay with her. She says he looks tired, and there was an adventure that he had, and it would be in ROM number 65. So he says he was fighting the Diarrheasts. And she asks about his people. He says that they're safe. And here she tells the Asgardians that the Rainbow Bridge is broken and they're going to remain on Earth until it's fixed, or they find another way to bring everybody back and to behave and stay with the humans. Volstagg is like, curious that it was not Odin that came. So Fandrel's like, it's time to party. So the army is going to pull back, and then Bill says he's going to make himself a little bit more conspicuous. Of course, he's still an alien who doesn't even have a nose, so it's kind of funny. And the soldier's like, maybe some different clothes would help. So she tells him that she'll help him, but she needs to speak with Fandrel first. So at another place in New York City, this uh, whatever this is, a robot or screen, or is saying that the opportunity is perfect and that the city is still recovering, and now is the time to strike. So in on Earth, in the uh, sorry, I got a little lost here. So at a penthouse in overlooking Central Park, Lorelai is wondering why Thor hasn't come back. You know, it's kind of funny. These stories are so condensed. My goodness, they really put in a lot into an issue. They don't do that anymore. These issues today, they sort of fly. Um, this would probably be like this issue alone would probably be like three parts or so. But Simonson fits so much into it anyway. So the mead that he was drinking, he should be burning with a desire for her, wanting to get in. Of course, the mead was replaced by um I forgot his name. Anyway, feel free, like I said, look into the playlist. And Roger McKenzie, I think it was. So anywho, behind her you can see that someone is coming. She thinks it's the Enchantress, so she's gonna give her the reception she needs. So she picks up the pot here, is gonna hit her in the head. Only it was Loki, and she thought it was the Enchantress because she knows about her and Thor. And um, Odin, or sorry, Loki says that the stakes are too high to allow the Enchantress to interfere. So Lorelai wants to return to Asgard, says it's dull on Earth, and that his hold on Earth seems to have weak, or his hold, her hold on Thor seems to have weakened, and so Loki says that Thor is in Asgard, and that if the meat is truly as enchanting, it it will help his plans. She wants him to convince Thor about discussing the next ruler of Asgard, which of course Loki thinks it should be him, and that she should be next to him, tending him and giving him some of the mead. So, and then the two disappear as you can see here that the two are going back to Asgard. But of course, Thor is leaving. So Thor is going to kind of wander in the wilderness as he sort of wants to heal. And Heimdall tells him that he'll pray for a swift return and hopes he finds peace. And so, as Thor is looking, or just wandering, he sees some footprints, most likely of the giants that were before. So he's going to go investigate. Hela, of course, is still irritated by their encounter and throws an avalanche. He and his horse are running it, and so she does not want him to get away. So she decides to kill the poor horse, and so sends the thing, hits the horse, and the poor horse gets it, and he falls, and the avalanche is upon him. And so now here's Mjolnir. Very cool panel here. And it's now quiet as a grave. So we got a small portion here. So Chicago here, and we're finally gonna know what it was that Thor wanted Fandral to know. Here, the nurses. This is Donald Blake's office, and the nurses are like, he's been gone for months, and that Shield. He was working for Shield or something. There's a knock on the door. They're all like, "Oh my gosh, everything's coming due. We're running out of money. They're all going to be unemployed." So Fandral comes in with a bag, and he tells them that this is for them, and it's all gold. And she's like, "This isn't America." And he's like, "Nope, it's even better." And so he called it severance pay. So he tells them that it's all you know, to basically go in peace, and he takes Donald Blake's sign. So that concludes our issue. So we're gonna go to the next one here, and so we're gonna be kind of quick here. So 355, great cover here by Simonson. So this issue is not drawn by Walter Simonson, just to let you know. Um, so he takes a break the from the drawing, and it's going to be Sal Buscema, who will eventually take the reins as regular artist. So Thor, he's has recovered here, or he's recovering from that avalanche in the warm fire, and so he's got Mjolnir in his hand, so he can lift the hammer. Thor starts to awaken, and he puts the hammer next to him, and he's like, the avalanche, oh, and then he remembers kind of what was happening. He asked who he is, and so Thor asks if he's in Valhalla. This gentleman tells him Valhalla is more light and more warmth, but he welcomes him to his home. Thor wonders if this is some kind of trap, but he senses that's what he's thinking. So he says, if I wanted you dead, I would have left you behind beneath the snow, and Hela would have see you from the dead. And so he tells him that if he wants supper, then he needs to wrestle him. And this goes back to the age of Vikings, where they kind of did do actual combat fighting. So, and Thor is like, oh my gosh, he's weak, and he warns him only two have bested him in combat, and he grabs Thor, and Thor is knocked down. So he snaps his finger, and these ice creatures bring him some warm broth and some bread. So they're gonna try to nurse him back. So he's telling him the story of Surtur and how much safe everybody is with what happened, but of course that the price was high. So this gentleman here is basically telling Thor to quit his whining, that Odin wouldn't appreciate his son dishonoring his memory like that just by being whining and sniveling. And Thor, of course, doesn't take kindly to that. So, and he says he knew he knew Odin before he was born, and that they were old friends, the two of them. So he says it's nighttime, so it's time to sleep and rest, and they'll finish talking in the morning, and Thor falls asleep right away. So in New York City, we got the Warriors 3 going through Broadway here. The art, of course, it's serviceable. Sal Buscema has been around for a very, very, very long time. But he's no Walt Simonson, but he is serviceable. So the Warriors 3 are looking for an establishment to kind of party and celebrate their victory. Of course, they see a Macy's, and they think that there's that it's perhaps a place where there's mead, which is basically like beer, and sees like this kitchen, but that there's no food there or anything. And as they look at things, he's like, it's not even fit for throwing, and he says, "Oh, I should bring my wife here. This cookware is very good." So, meanwhile, uh, Sif and Beta Ray Bill are kind of walking through the city talking. So she's going to tell the truth to Bill that about Odin, that she doesn't want to keep a secret. So meanwhile, here in what's called Diamond Row here, um, these from the previous issue, um, the bad guys, I guess, are arriving here. So they're saying after all those demons, who's gonna pay attention to them? So they're gonna set this up here to go and rob these places here, and we're back here with Thor and that man talking. So it's morning here, and they're gonna go talk, and he tells them about the circle of life, how the bear eats the seal, but then the bear might get killed by a hunter, and it's the cycle. And there's no shame in living, so there should be no shame um in dying. And Thor feels as if this were uh Odin, as if he were still there. He asks him his for a name. He says he's had many names. Tawaz was the one that served him well. And so they've been out all day because now he says the sun is setting. Let's return home. So, um, so Thor. Oh, my apologies. Thor realizes as he's coming in. So, that the hammer is in there, and he says, "How did the hammer get here? If um only he can lift it." And he says, "To us it was you, that no one can lift Mjolnir save only my father, and who loves disguises himself." He goes, "Well, no, I carried you, but my servants are made out of ice, so they picked up the hammer because they're not real." So he now says, "Time to wrestle for your supper, and show me your medal." So the two begin to wrestle. He says, "Not a bad grip for such a little god." And so they wrestle, but the Wazaz gets the better of him. He says he's not quite ready yet. So they're going to have supper and put those meat on those bones so that he heals. He asks Thor if he misses Asgard when he's on Earth. He says they're both his homes, so um, he he likes Earth and he likes Asgard. So, and he has sworn to defend Earth. So later that night, of course, he goes back to sleep. So we go into Loki's fortress, which I absolutely love, the winding road just like that. I think that is so clever. So, um, he's here. Basically, he wants Thor to support him becoming the new king of Asgard, and expects Lorelei to help him. So every issue during this era, Jim Shooter what treated as every issue is somebody's first. So if you see sometimes issues kind of give recaps, it is because of that, because someone may not have picked up the previous. So they wanted these to be as accessible as possible while telling a bigger tale. So he's completed another figure. Thor has kind of woken up and sees this Tawaz here breathe life into her, and she begins to dance. And of course Thor's like, only my dad can do that, and he's like, perhaps there was already life already within the figurine. So he's sure that it's Odin. And of course, he says climb and then we'll talk for a bit. There's a lot of there's a lot of talking in this issue, not a lot of action, but um, which is probably why he had the dude wrestle with him so there could be a little bit of action. So he basically at one time he well first of all he says he is not Odin. Um but at one time he was a god that decided he didn't want to do it anymore and he wanted to be free from all the responsibilities of being a god. So he basically wanted to retire and left the job to people like Odin. Um, he says, I don't even know much about his origin. Um, that he doesn't know more about his dad. Thor basically said, or Tawaz basically says it doesn't matter. You know, it in Thor 294, which we didn't cover. That was much earlier than the than this. He was the fusion of four earlier gods, but then, of course, in another issue of Thor, he was the son of Bor, and with his brothers, and so he said it doesn't matter. Um, he loved you. He says it's noon. Let us wrestle again before we eat. And says, "Come once more into the breach." And so Thor grabs him, and he says, "My heart is nearly bursting, but I must achieve victory. I must." And he picks him up and flips him, and of course he starts to laugh. He says, "Oh, that was excellent. A good match as I've had in many. Now let's take one last meal together." So Thor asks him what he means by one last time. He says, "You're ready to leave now because you're strong." And so Tuas says that there'll be a big need for him in Asgard now that his father is gone. And he agrees, but he says that he doesn't want to leave. He feels so at home, and that his father's loss weighs heavily on him. So he tells him of a poet in from Earth that said, "To everything there is a season, time to be born, a time to die," and all that stuff. It's from a Bible verse. And Thor says, "What do mortals know of the sorrow of gods?" He says, "Even though they live a long time, they're bound to the seasons." So so the ice persons speak and tells them, we only live a day, but during that day, because they melt at night next to the fire, they said they live and enjoy the cold and the warmth even in their brief span. So, and as she's talking, she melts, telling Thor about how wonderful it is. And so she realizes that, it was the heat of the hand or the heat of the fire that, the fates and the weird rule in the end. It's basically one of those, the lesson essentially is that it's okay to mourn the dead, but you're alive. And so they bring him his things. He actually says if he would be honored if Tawaz would go with him to Asgard. And he chuckles and says, "Thank you, Thor, but my place is here." And he says, "Who would make my little friends if I left them?" And so they bring his stuff so that he can go home. So he says, there's so much of his father on him and wants to pay him for his generosity. He says he just wants to be left alone. He no longer desires to be a god, but there is something he can do for him. He says he saw some wanderers over the mountain hostile, just making certain that they come to no harm. Perhaps there you might see they too return home safely now that the danger has passed. And Thor says that will be done. And then he says, "Farewell, Thor. Go in peace. And then he says, I shall never forget you or your little friends. And of course, he says, nor I, Thunderer. And so, of course, this is where Frigga was staying, and they see him. And so, Thor is going to take them home. So, um, she tells the kids to go packing, and I love her hairdress. Looks like Wrench. So he says he would rather die than tell her what he has to say, and she says, "You don't have to say any. I know already. She's lost her husband, and um, Thor lost a father." And then asks that she holds him for a bit and feels her father's warmth in her. So he says it's time to go. And so he asks, who knows a good hiking song? And of course, 100 bottles of Glog on the wall. 100 bottles of Glog. And so this eagle comes in called Whiteface. Says Thor is a young, a fine lad. Um, he's glad he left his footprints in the snow that he might be drawn there to ease his grief. And when Lassie saw him, he was a newborn. Um, and here comes the big reveal. He has a warrior soul, young and proud, so like his father, but I would expect nothing less from my great grandson. May he walk in honor. So this was Odin's grandfather, not his father, his grandfather. So he's been around for a very long time. So, and here, of course, we end our tale here with the credits. So Walt Simonson was the writer, with Buscema as the artist, and John Workman the letterer. So I know this video ran a little long, so I do apologize. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening. Bye.